Nairobi is my city. Well, perhaps not exactly. I was born here and so were my parents, but I've spent most of my life living overseas. I've been here now for less than a year, but the city has really grown on me. One of the most interesting things about Nairobi is its diversity. There are more than 42 different ethnic communities living here from all over Kenya, and with them they all bring unique dishes, traditional foods and flavors. With all African cities, the divide between rich and poor is extreme, and Nairobi is certainly no exception. The well-off may complain about rocketing prices on the menus of their favourite Nairobi restaurants, but the global food crisis has far more serious implications for the poor. Judith Mango's customers may not have much money, but at least they have jobs. She prepares packed lunches at her home and then delivers them to office workers in the city.
Nifanya kitu yako, fanya kama hivyo, fanya kitu yako, ufanye makosa, hakuna matata hapa.
So here in Kenya, when we mean traditional food, most of the times we goes with the tribe. So like this food, it's originated from Kikuyu people. Like me, I'm a Kisi lady. So this is not our traditional food. But many of my customers, they're Kikuyu. So I must make them what they like.
We had moved away from traditional foods because we had thought of them as a poor man's food. So I'm trying to glamorize it, tell people...
Because of their relatively low cost, Judith's customers may have little alternative but to eat traditional food. But Kenya's best-known TV chef, Susan Kamau, extols their virtues for other reasons.
Traditional foods are much more nutritious.
So we've arrived at this amazing market where you can get so many varieties of fruit and vegetables.
Yes, this is Rebecca here. She's got a wonderful stall with a lot of different herbs and vegetables. This is kunde, and it comes in a bunch like this. She's told us it's 5 shillings a bunch. And then there's something like this which is very beautiful. This is very, look at the difference.
Yeah.
This is a kunde, small little leaves. This is what we call kahurura, which is the pumpkin leaf.
Are you succeeding, do you think, in your effort to get people to come back to these very organic, very natural fruits and vegetables?
I think so. I think we are succeeding because especially now we have these people getting sick from eating the wrong things.
Susan explained to me that the so-called rich man's diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure are starting to appear in a sector of Kenyan society that can afford to eat at the fast food joints springing up around town. But Susan, there are factors addressing the availability of some of these traditional foods that you're trying to encourage people to eat,
yes,
right?
Yes. This stall here handles lots of different beans. I was talking to the lady who mans this stall, and she says a tin like this, which is a common bean here, is 170 shillings. That's like a day's pay for many people. So you might find people who will buy that tin, take it home and cook it and eat it for the next 5 days because you can't afford to buy one every day. We've just had post-election violence just earlier on this year. People have been displaced, so there hasn't been farming, there hasn't been planting. The rainy season has just passed, and so you will find a lot of these, for example, which we do grow locally, have been imported. For example, this type of bean has been imported from Tanzania.
And these are beans that traditionally would be grown here in Kenya?
Yes, exactly. So bringing it in from outside makes it more expensive, and it means that the person who would be growing it at home isn't doing it, which is a shame. You will find that in the central area, techniques of cooking is quite boring. Maybe we do a lot of boiling and a lot of mashing. In the western area, you get a lot of the vegetables like we looked at. But at the coastal area, because of the influence from the Arabs, for example, who brought in oil to us, who brought in spices, You will find things like garlic, a lot of onions. We've got red and white. This is turmeric and that's ginger. And this, of course, it's a coconut. And I think in the coast they use this for almost everything they cook. And I think we're going to take a step outside and we'll visit this restaurant where they do a lot of coastal cooking. So that should be fun.
Susan, most of the people eating street food aren't going to markets like the one we've been to. Where are they getting their meals?
Well, they will go to these people who set up shop on the side of the road. They just put up their stones and buy the charcoal, burn it and cook. And we're going to, here, there's one just there. Something just similar to that. Millicent's just been telling me how she cooks for the people who move around here, whether they're gardeners from the residential or the matatu drivers maybe who want to stop for lunch.
Susan, can she actually show us some of the dishes?
Utatuonesha? Tuoneshe tafadhali. Tuoneshe. Hapa kuna nini hapo ndani?
Oh.
Asante.
So why is there a black plastic bag in there?
She wants it to cook in one pot. And so instead of mixing the beans and the maize, she separates in the bag. So it cooks in one pot.
Is that because she's only got one pot?
No, I want to save everything.
Oh, you want to save on fire?
And time.
Yes.
All those.
So she's economizing by cooking several things in it, and then also the wood.
At one time.
And the wood.
Yeah.
Because she has to buy the wood or go collect it.
So good to be there in Mombasa, in Mombasa,
So Susan, this is a typically coastal restaurant, and just looking at this menu, words like biryani, pilau, seems very Indian.
We have actually in Kenya had a lot of influence from the Indian cuisine. Things like pilau, biryani, things like chapati, kachumbari. If you ask the guy on the street, he'll think it's actually Kenyan because he's grown up with it. But those are Indian things that we copied and we Kenyanized. We want to order something. Okay. Is there anything you can suggest that is really nice?
Biryani chicken.
Biryani chicken.
Or biryani fish.
Biryani fish. Would you like the biryani chicken?
Yeah, why don't we try both? Now, you've mentioned some of the snacks being typically coastal.
Yes.
What should we try from that menu?
There's two types here. There's ndengu, which is a bean, and there's kunde, which is a leafy green.
I think I'm in the mood for a bean.
Yes?
Yeah.
Wow. It's turmeric for the colouring. These are the leafy greens.
Okay.
That over there are the beans in coconut.
Similar to what we saw in the market,
Yes.
right?
And in here, there's a very nice homemade chili paste.
What sort of money are people looking at spending on food like this?
Well, I just had some rice, fish, and some vegetable. That's 250 shillings, which is about $4. And that's expensive for most Kenyan people. But, just to show the difference, we've got such a big range in Nairobi. From where we were at Millicent's, where you're just paying 25 shillings, to this, 250, to Carnival, where it's 100 times more.
As the name suggests, a visit to this world-famous restaurant is all about eating meat. It gained its reputation in a time before the phrase endangered species crept into our vocabularies. Back then, you could admire the savannah's many majestic species of wildlife of an afternoon and then come here and eat them for dinner. Do not let this man pass you by, as he carries with him the ingredients for mixing a delicious cocktail. Dawa is the Swahili word for medicine. I will say no more. Many Kenyans I spoke to reckoned if the majority of the population could afford to eat meat all the time, then that's what they do. The Masai tribe is no exception. 20 kilometers outside Nairobi, there's another unique restaurant called Ole Polis. They specialize in Kenya's most famous dish, nyama choma.
Ole Polis is all about getting out of town, running away from traffic, coming to Masai land for good meat and a feast for your eyes. Our clientele is a mix of professionals. They come to Lepolos because that's where you can get the best out of nyama choma.
Now let's talk about nyama choma. That's really why people come here.
That's why they come.
What exactly is it? What is nyama choma?
Well, meat, etc. At Lepolos, our motto is we keep it simple. We are specialized. It is done by the local Masais. It is done by people who have traditionally been doing it generation after generation. So it comes out tasty. And the goats are sourced within this local area. They eat the natural trees. Zero plastics.
As you may have guessed, nyama choma is really a Kenyan-style barbecue. The Simcoe tells me that his meat doesn't get fresher, as he has a government vet, a slaughterhouse, and a butchery on the premises.
How important, how vital, how central is meat?
Meat is a culture. Kenyans have gone mad with eating meat. We eat a lot of meat. I don't even think we produce enough meat to satisfy the demand of this country.
So you don't envision, you don't see Kenyans becoming vegetarians, for example?
Not in the near future.
Kwa majina yangu naitwa Recho Joki Dicho. Niko na watoto wawili na sijaoleka. Lakini nafanya biashara ya maziwa. Vile nitanunua maziwa na nipeleke huko, na nilikuwa natafuta biashara ile nitafanya. Sikuwa nataka kukaa nilime sana.
Many suppliers of fresh produce to Nairobi operate outside the formal sector. Over 75% of milk, for instance, is supplied by people like Rachel and not big dairy companies. Apart from the produce of her own cow, she distributes for other small farmers, moving around 350 litres per day into the city.
Jambo mingi sana kutoka Weusi. Salamu mingi sana kutoka.
Rachel uses various forms of transport to get her milk to the city, starting with bicycling it from her farm to the national road. Two connecting taxi rides then take it the 30-odd kilometres into town. Once Rachel arrives, she's met by Rajab Abdul, her Nubian cart puller. They will then distribute the milk, first by cart, then by wheelbarrow through the winding streets of Kabira, one of Africa's largest slums. Kabira was established in 1918 as a soldiers' settlement 5 kilometres from Nairobi city centre. Plots were allotted to the Nubian soldiers who were from Sudan as a reward for service in Britain's various wars. Since then, it's been allowed to grow informally. Kabira is now a town of 1 million people with its own vibrant internal economy. One of the most visible sectors of this is food supply, whether through the ubiquitous street vendors or the more established hotels. In these days of skyrocketing prices, those who sell to the poor know best the thin line between profit and loss. Fatuma is of Nubian descent. Her family has lived in Kabira since its inception. In 1992, she started up her first hotel in Kabira. Don't be confused, hotel is the Kenyan word for cheap eating house. People don't actually rent rooms here. She now has a few branches around the slum, all supplied from this kitchen.
20 liters cooking oil. I was buying at 11.20. Now cooking oil I'm buying at 2,400. That is double price and over. Now if you want to sell things so that you get profit, you have to sell it at 20 shillings onwards. And those people cannot manage to get even 20 shillings a day. Because as things go high, salaries are low.
Kwa sababu last year hapa hivi tulikuwa tunaingia hiyo chapati na madondo tunamanga 20 bob. Lakini sasa tukiingia hapa tukule chapati na madondo hiyo ni tayari 40 bob.
After the announcement of the presidential, everything went astray in Kabira. So many people lose their life, lose their properties, lose their what, lose their businesses.
Tusiseme ati wanasiasa wanatudanganya, hakuna kitu yoyote wanafanya.
And if you don't have any other business, you don't have anybody to help you, you don't know where to get money, you can't get money, what do you do?
Juu wao wenyewe ndio wanafaidika. Sasa mwananchi wa chini.
Kibet Malakwen is Rachel's biggest customer. He buys 100 litres from her every day. Like many small businesses in Kabira, his was directly affected by the violence that erupted in Kenya following elections at the end of 2007. He now has to boil his milk supply to make it last longer, as his shop was ransacked and his fridge irreparably damaged. However, he's philosophical about the post-election anger.
Before elections, we were together. There was no any hatred among our communities. Then after elections, people were demanding change. People want a government that helps people, that gives people freedom, which represents all communities in the country. Kikuyus have ruled this country since independent. It was tribal. People wanted change. A government that represents all the tribes.
Well, we're now on our way to Kenya's Great Rift Valley, the country's breadbasket. And there's an interesting quote in today's newspaper for an internally displaced person here in Kenya that says, "When hunger comes calling, as indeed it is on the verge of doing, it will not sort out its victims on tribal lines."
Passing these camps set up for internally displaced persons is a stark reminder that not only is Africa living the same nightmare as the rest of the planet in terms of the escalating food crisis, but it also has to contend with age-old problems like tribalism and xenophobia that are now proving disastrous to food security. Thomas Mangare and his wife Rose are representative of the many displaced farmers that are fearful of returning to their land.
Na mahali hapo nafikiri kulifanyika madhara kiasi kwa sababu kuna watu waliaga. Nao pia sasa ndio ukawa ni mbaya zaidi kufurushwa na bila kujua unaenda wapi na unafanya nini na ni kipi kimetokea. Ukiangalia area ile utaona kweli hata wewe mwenyewe utasikia kuna uoga wa kuingia mahali pale. Maana hakika tuseme kwa ukweli ni kabila moja linaishi mahali pale.
Thomas is afraid of going back to his land because things haven't calmed down yet. Instead, he's rented a small plot so he can try and grow some food for his family.
Kutopanda kwetu tumechelewa kwa kuwa tulifurushwa manyumbani. Sasa ndio ikabidi tubahatishe kupanda, lakini msimu wa kupanda ulipita.
While tribalism has cast its shadow over their lives, their story still offers hope. It's a story of how individuals can see past group rivalries and bridge divides.
Huyu mke wangu ni Mkalenjin, mimi ni Mkisii. Na wazazi wake walikubali nifunge ndoa naye sababu hapakuwa na uhasama wowote. Si ndio ukiona wakati huu wote wa maisha haya mazito tumekimbia na watoto, njaa na nini na kulala nje na tuko naye mpaka wakati huu. Kuna njia pana uwezekano kwamba hawa watu hawajapendana. Sisi tumependana isipokuwa shida ndio imetusonga zaidi.
And is it possible that love can conquer all? Well, I can't imagine it's the answer to all of Kenya's problems, but a little more of it around here might not go amiss.
Well, tribal divisions here in Kenya are still healing, but there's a lot of positivity around. This song is by a very popular artist called Eric Wanyanya, and it's about a Kikuyu boy, that's one of the main ethnic tribes, who falls in love with a girl from a different community, a Luo girl, and it's about his journey to her ancestral home in Western Kenya to persuade her parents of his undying love.
It's interesting being a young Kenyan at this time, or young African. I think a lot of young people have a good idea of what they think is wrong with the leadership in Africa, or the issues that continue to plague our development or lack thereof. And so as a musician, I sort of feel an obligation to address these issues and to put a lot of people's sentiments into lyrics and music. The post-election crisis, a lot of people say it has everything to do with tribalism. I think tribalism was maybe a spark that got the fire going, but there are deeper issues. We can't talk about peace if people's access to the necessities of life have been curtailed. I mean, there can't be peace without food. There can't be peace without sustenance. That's something that continues to elude the debate that the politicians are currently engaging in. Adhiambo is an attempt by myself to talk about issues of tribalism. I'm from the Kikuyu tribe, and I went out with a girl from the Luo tribe. My family members, who I thought were quite sort of progressive, said to me, "Oh, it's nice that you brought her," but my aunties were like, "But make sure that she's not the woman that you marry," you know. And so I wrote this song about this guy who falls in love with a girl from another tribe and learns the language so that he can go and tell her parents that his love is true. The song is trying to communicate a message of love, of togetherness, of unity. My ethnic group, the Kikuyu, have been known not to eat fish. For some reason, it's like we don't, you know. And I thought I didn't eat fish until I went to Kisumu. There's a way that fish is made where it's a whole fish. And I mean, we don't know what we're missing. We get called the potato people by other tribes because Kikuyus eat a lot of potatoes. If there's one thing that I wish we'd do more of, is be more adventurous in our eating. I think down at the coast, the Waswahilis, their culinary culture is big, and I think we need to learn from them. Wow. Because we just tend to boil stuff.